I've spent a lot of my life feeling overlooked and underestimated. When I was doing my best, it seemed like nobody saw it. Then, it was like everything changed. I discovered Rasmussen University. Rasmussen saw my true potential and gave me the support and confidence I needed to become who I am today. Are you ready to write your next chapter? Rasmussen University. Learn more at rasmussen.edu/Minnesota.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve. Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime on this Tuesday with episodes of Dragnet, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. We'll take a look at the news from the date both those shows aired, October 1st, 1949. Escape, an episode entitled The Most Dangerous Game, and Boston Blackie starring Dick Calmer, and we'll find out more about the Metropolis football team poisoning with Superman. That's all coming up on this Tuesday. This is the first day of October, brand new month, 275th day of the year, 91 days left until we get to 2025. The first steamboat to sail the Mississippi River arrives in New Orleans on this date in 1811. In 1880, John Philip Sousa became leader of the Marine Corps Band. 1880, the first electric lamp factory opened by Thomas Edison. In 1890, the Yosemite National Park and the Yellowstone National Park established by Congress. In the state of California on this date in 1891, Stanford University opened its doors. In 1908, Ford put the Model T car on the market at a price of $825. That would be $28,229 today. Ford often cited hard work as the reason for his success.
There is no substitute for hard work.
In 1910, a large bomb destroyed the Los Angeles Times building in downtown L.A. by a union member belonging to the International Association of Bridge and Structural Iron Workers. The explosion started a fire which killed 21 newspaper employees and injured 100 more. In 1926, an oil field accident cost aviator Wiley Post his left eye, but he used the settlement money to buy his first aircraft. The George Washington Bridge linking New Jersey and New York City opened on this date in 1931. During Game 3 of the World Series at Wrigley Field on this date in 1932, Babe Ruth pointed to center field with his bat. On the next pitch, he hit a homer in that direction. Now, there's some dispute about why he pointed in that direction. Ruth maintained it was no coincidence.
Well, I looked down at center field and I pointed. I said, I'm going to hit the next pitch ball right past the flagpole. Well, the good Lord must have been with me.
Another of those things of legend back in that day in 1932. The Pennsylvania Turnpike opened on this date in 1940. It's considered the first superhighway in the U.S. In 1957, the first appearance of In God We Trust on paper currency. In 1958, NASA was created. 1961, Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, the New York Yankees engaging in an epic battle to break Babe Ruth's single-season home run record of 60 in 1927. Well, Maris ended up hitting his 61st against the Boston Red Sox, passing Ruth.
2 balls, no strikes on Roger Maris. Here's the windup. Fastball hit deep to right. This could be it. Way back there. Holy cow! He's fight for that ball out there.
Yankees announcer Phil Rizzuto. The record was challenged by then baseball commissioner Ford Frick, who had been a friend of Ruth's, who said that Maris needed to break the record in 154 games instead of the current schedule of 162. Interestingly enough, it was made into a movie. Billy Crystal directed the movie. It was written by Hank Steinberg. It's 61 asterisk. Barry Pepper starring as Roger Maris, Thomas Jane as Mickey Mantle on their quest to break that season single-run record. And it was on HBO, and I don't know about its availability today. But I'm sure that if you poke around enough, Richard Roper called the movie one of his top 5 all-time favorite baseball movies. And Barry Pepper got a Golden Globe nominee for Best Performer by an Actor in a Miniseries or a Motion Picture Made for Television. Premiering on CBS TV on this date, Mr. Ed.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed. A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed. Go right to the source and ask the horse. He'll give you the answer that you endorse. He's always on a steady course. Talk to Mr. Ed. He will yakety yak a streak and waste your time a day. But Mr. Ed will never speak unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk till his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this. I am Mr.
Ed. Starring Alan Young, who died in 2016, he played second fiddle to a horse, voiced by former leading man Alan Rocky Lane, who died in 1973 of cancer at the age of 64. Interestingly, the show premiered in independent syndication from January of 1958 to July of 1961, becoming one of the few series to debut in syndication and then be picked up by a major network for prime time. Premiering on this date in 1962, a show with its third major host, The Tonight Show, starring that boy from Nebraska, Johnny Carson. Carson would host the show for nearly 30 years, and to date is the longest-serving host of the program. And you may want to know, that theme you just heard was written by Paul Anka and Johnny Carson. Don't know which notes Carson wrote. Maybe he wrote the drum part, I don't know. But it was great. You know, when you look at late-night television, Carson was it. And the great part is that, thank goodness, the successors to the Carson legacy have taken to making those shows available to us. Not all of them. Sadly, many of the early ones have just been lost to time. But you can find the Carson Tonight Show. If you have any sort of streaming media, streaming television, you can stream the Tonight Show, the Johnny Carson series. It's the Johnny Carson channel. It's on the Roku channel platform. It's on Pluto TV. It's on Sling TV. It's all over the place. It's a daily ritual here that I have to watch at least 30 minutes of Carson a day. Just to keep my sense of humor. Carson's version of The Tonight Show premiere. And, you know, when you look at the first 3 hosts of The Tonight Show and you realize, my gosh, you know, and I'm not saying anything against Leno, but Leno was definitely no Carson. He was no Jack Parr, and he was no Steve Allen. But, you know, he did a respectable job, and the show hasn't been the same since. 1969, the Concorde supersonic transport plane broke the sound barrier for the first time. Walt Disney World opened near Orlando on this date in 1971. The Thrilla in Manila on this date in 1975. Muhammad Ali defeating Joe Frazier in a boxing match in Manila in the Philippines. The U.S. returned sovereignty of the Panama Canal to Panama on this date in 1979. Epcot Center opened at Walt Disney World near Orlando on this date in 1982. 11 years after Walt Disney World opened, Epcot Center opened. Sony launched the first consumer compact disc player on this date in 1982. In 1985, President Reagan named his former head of Health and Human Services to an ambassadorship.
I am delighted, happier than I've been in a long time, that Margaret Heckler has agreed to my request that she become the ambassador to Ireland.
The former congresswoman going through a nasty and public divorce while she was in the cabinet, and the move was seen as a way to get her out of Washington. Margaret Heckler confirmed in December and was seen as a very effective ambassador. In 1987, Labor Secretary Ray Donovan asserted his innocence, as he appeared in New York for arraignment with 7 officials of his former construction company on charges of falsifying records for a $186 million subway project.
I am outraged and disgusted by the actions and the obviously partisan timing of the Bronx District Attorney. I have not seen the indictment, but I can assure you that it is not worth the paper that it's written on. My concerns are that my family has to endure this mindless inquisition and that this not reflect negatively upon the President. To assure that this matter does not become a part of the current election campaign, I have asked the President tonight to accept my request for a leave of absence without pay, effective immediately, and he has granted my request.
And all the defendants, including Donovan, were acquitted, after which Donovan famously quoted as asking, "Which office do I go to get my reputation back?" You know, we think today that any sort of political prosecution for things other than politics, we think it's a new thing. No. Political prosecutions go all the way back to the Reagan administration, and it's sad. 1998, Vladimir Putin became a permanent member of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. In 2001, the Supreme Court suspended former President Bill Clinton from practicing before the High Court. In 2008, a $700 billion financial industry bailout won lopsided passage in the Senate, 74-25, after it was loaded with a bunch of tax breaks and other sweeteners. And it was on this date in 2017, a date I remember well, 58 people killed, 851 others injured in a mass shooting on a music festival in Las Vegas.
It was nothing like anything I've ever been through in my life. This is the scariest thing I've ever been through in my life.
One of the injured in that shooting, it was a horrific situation. And if I can say nothing else, it was the first season for the Vegas Golden Knights, the first major professional sports team in Las Vegas. And the Vegas Golden Knights dedicated their first season to, and it was an expansion team. They dedicated their first season to 1 October, which is what they referred to the event in 2017 as. And the Vegas Golden Knights did something that no expansion team ever did. They went to the Stanley Cup playoffs in their first season. They had the best record of any first season expansion team in National Hockey League history. And it just showed something to me. It was a horrific event, a horrible event. But when you look back on it, it kind of brought the